Hello everybody, my name is Eric, and today I'm going to be showing you the cool new way, as another YouTuber called Morganaut calls it. Although my method is a bit different, but please check out her channel as well if you want to see another way of doing this that's more integrated, but also a bit more complicated to set up. I know she's going to have a live stream soon, she said. And this is what inspired me to make this video, where I'm going to show you how to do this more from the perspective of a technically advanced user or Linux user. So now I'm going to explain the benefits. So one of the benefits is that a lot of this hardware requirements can be bypassed. Now, you do have some of your own. First of all, your CPU needs to support IO-MMU in addition to virtualization. All Ryzen CPUs do, and this does circumvent the Ryzen Hackintosh issues. Your macOS VM will probably not be able to run virtualization software. It is possible to enable nested virtualization, however, the performance is generally subpar. And you will need to have a supported graphics card if you want to pass through a graphics card. You don't have to. You can, although the performance will be limited, just use the system as is if you're intending to run maybe some sort of coding or some other system that just doesn't need any performance on that front. What you will need is this project on GitHub called OSX-KVM. Unfortunately, there was another one called Simple OSX-KVM, which was much easier, but that has fallen out of favor. No one's maintaining it, so now we have this. Now, first of all, before we get into the rest of this, I'm going to show you a command you should run on your Linux system, which will significantly improve your performance of any VM. Sudo CPU power frequency-set-g performance. I don't want to capitalize that. And there we go. Now we can bash top, and we can see that our CPU is in fact running at the frequency it is supposed to. Basically what this will do is prevent your CPU from downclocking while it's under a little load. This is less optimal for power consumption, but for virtualization, because the host system's Linux kernel is not able to see individual application utilization, it's pretty necessary. Now, the first step, and I've already done this, but I'll read this out, is to install the packages your system needs. Now, I already have everything we need for virtualization. I've also set a couple of things up that I use for a Windows gaming VM as well, which can also be used with a macOS VM, which is to enable Samba so that you can share your file system. Personally, I just created a Samba share for my root that can potentially be insecure, but as long as you're careful and your local network is not accessible over wireless or anyone has physical access, it's fine in my opinion. But depending on your security tolerance, you may not want to go for that. You may just want to have a shared section. But what that does is it means all of my drives, which given how Linux works, means all of my system, I can just do ls/mount, and every drive in this system is now accessible to both systems. So that's one trick I use. The other one is just to add a firewall rule so that despite the fact that my system is NATed, it will be able to SSH into the host. That means that because I have a static IP, which is, and I can show this because this is a local IP, it won't do you guys any good, 192.168.1.3, 1 and 2 are taken by other infrastructure I have, so I can just SSH into that from the VM. VMs that are NATed will be able to access your host network, but the opposite is not true, assuming their firewall rules permit it. Okay, so now you can go through here and set all of this up. Now, the first step, once you've got your dependencies, which will vary by distro, this person's written instructions for Ubuntu. Given I'm on Arch, I didn't have to enable KVM, it was enabled out of the box. So I'm going to just git clone this. You need the shift in order to remove the formatting. Okay, so this is going through. So now this file has been cloned. We can go OSX-KVM, and now we can see all of these different options we have. Now, what I'm going to do is import the XML so I can use it through virt-manager, but you can also just run it off of the command line. However, before any of that, we need to do -fetch macOS v2.py. Now we can choose. Now, you can use Big Sur, Monterey, Catalina, Mojave, High Sierra. The only reason you'd want to use High Sierra is if you have an relatively modern, such as the GTX 1080 or 980, NVIDIA GPU that is not supported in recent versions of macOS, but it is supported in High Sierra. Now, because of this method, you can actually run this on any, even if your CPU is too new, it will still work perfectly fine. But given that I don't have any of those constraints, I'm going to go for Monterey. For the purpose of this video, I'm not going to showcase a GPU pass-through. I am going to make another video on a single GPU pass-through, and I will link the Arch wiki for how to do multi-GPU pass-through. I don't currently have a GPU that is supported other than a GTX 770, which that thing's unreliable, doesn't work very well, so I'm not going to bother with that for now. So let's download that. Okay, that's done. So now I'm going to use Virt Manager. If you want to do it the command line way, that's also an option, but to me this is much easier. So first of all, we're going to use this command, and that's going to change so that our user... Now let's also just cat that MacOS.xml to see if that looks like it would make sense. We're going to look for these file paths. Yes, that looks in line with the file structure I've chosen. You will have to do more if you, for whatever reason, decided to put this in a different than your home directory. Okay. So now I can do virt-xml-validate macos.xml. Validates. That's good to know. Now I need to create these images. So first of all, we do qemu-img convert base system.dmg-o, which means the output format, base system.img. Now we just got to let that run. Okay, that's done. Now I'm going to create a for the system. So we're going to do qemu-img create-f qcow2. That basically is a format that's space efficient for our host. It stands for, I don't know what the Q stands for, but copy on write 2 is basically what that means. And then we're going to do mac_hg_ng.img, and then you can do whatever size you want. Just to make this more interesting, I'm going to do 337 gigabytes. Because of the nature of qcow2, it's not going to take up all that space unless it actually needs it. So there we go. That's done. So now we can do // connect. I might need a sudo on that. I'm not sure. System define macOS.xml. Now we can go to Virt Manager, Virtual Machine Manager, and we can see our VM, macOS. So here we go. I'm just going to check that all of the files are here. Unknown, yeah, that seems to be alright. Now I can attempt, actually the network first of all, because that's going to be set to bridge, which is not what you want. That, you do want the VMXNet 3, because that will give your VM 10 gigabit networking. So now we can go start. No USB bus. Okay, well, one easy enough way of solving that was just to take that out of the XML. I'm not sure if that's actually... I might have to do something else to get the mouse to work, but... Okay, the mouse doesn't work, so I'm just going to look at those. I'm just going to add it. Okay, now the mouse works. Don't know why I had to do that, but... some sort of... Sometimes Virt Manager can be just a little bit finicky, but I still really like it. It makes working with virtual machines a million times easier than it used to be. So we want to find the right one. This is the 337, which doesn't quite work because that was in gigabytes and this gigabytes. And they recommend not using APFS, so we're going to follow that and use macOS Extended Journaled. Okay, good. I hate case-sensitive file formats, personally. Some people like them. I am not. Oh. What do we need? Do we need a second? Okay. Okay, that's my bad. So we have to pass through different keyboard. Okay. USB keyboard. Okay, so now we can just do this. It's kind of picky about the keyboard for whatever reason. But I also had to change it from port 2 to port 3. I don't know if that's something else I missed in the command, but now it works. So now we just have to install this. And this will take a while because for whatever reason, Apple only they don't distribute the full installer anymore. So it takes quite a while. Okay, so after a couple of hours of waiting and a few reboots, we're now ready to go. I guess I shouldn't say a couple, but an hour of waiting. I just left, had dinner, and I'm now back to finish this. So it just automatically reboots, so we don't need accessibility. Now, something I will say, just in general, whether you have a real Mac or Hackintosh, is do not sign into your Apple account here. You can do it once you've made your account, but you do not want to create your ID. So we want to not do that. We want to scroll down. Oh, I guess I have to scroll up because of natural scrolling. No, I'm an idiot. You go set up later. I don't know what I was doing. It's a bit slow right now, and that's because I haven't changed any of the settings. Yes, I definitely want to proceed without an Apple ID. Now here's the EULA. I'm not going to read it, but yeah, that's technically you're breaking the EULA by installing this on a VM on a PC, but that's up to you. I didn't tell you to do it. I didn't tell you not to do it. I'm not going to. We can call this whatever we want. I'm going to use the same username as I do in Linux and the same password, which I'm not going to show you. And that is because in doing that, I can then easily link to my SMB share. I am going to share some of my SMB config because I think that's... I haven't seen a tutorial. I know that some Ordinary Gamers does something similar, but I don't think he showed how he does it. So I'm going to show that part because I think it's interesting and worth understanding. There's going to be... Do we want to enable location services? No, because we don't have Wi-Fi. If you have Wi-Fi, maybe you do, but that's going to be a pain. The easiest thing to do is connect your network on your host and then just use whatever. Okay, so we're not going to use location services. Yeah, Cupertino time works. It probably doesn't work for you, but yeah, I'm on the same time zone, so I can do that. Continue. I wouldn't share analytics. Doesn't hurt anything. You can share them if you want to. I don't share analytics with anyone. I don't want this crap, you know? I mean, I know that I spend like 16 hours a day on a computer, so I don't need this. This is for people who are trying to not do that, but I'm not one of those people. And then here you can choose your theme. I think dark theme looks better. Apparently there's, my family at least, there's a gender gradient on this. All the men like the dark theme, all the women like the light theme. I don't think that's like a broader trend, because I think like 80% of people choose dark theme. But that's like it's like a family thing that I find weird. Okay, keyboard setup. Now this I always find annoying why it always asks me, and it does this on a real Mac. I don't get this aspect, like I can't just tell it, but here we go. ANSI North American, most of Asia and other, that would be accurate. I don't get why that's the thing, but here we go. So now we have our desktop with its default settings. So we're going to get a system with, okay, 4 gigabytes of RAM, 4 cores, Macintosh HD, just by default, display 3 megabytes. Now that's the one thing that we can't easily change. You can see our memory, and it believes we have a single memory slot, which contains a 0 megahertz memory module. Close enough. Displays, 1600 by 900. Okay, I'm going to shut this down. Now, unfortunately, I am going to improve performance. Unfortunately, you cannot, on a virtual Mac, you cannot get better graphics unless you pass through, or if you're using a real Mac to host in VMware, they have an option, which I believe works by passing through the Metal API, but that's not possible to do with a non-Mac host. So I'm just going to go CPUs, details. Let's go for something like, we can do 32. That'll be enough that I can show you how good the CPU performance is with this. And now we can also change the RAM. And we can do, just C. Just C. Oh, no, not K-System log. I want K-System. I mean, we could always just use, what's GNOME System Monitor? System Monitor, okay. Maybe it was renamed. It used to be called KSysGuard. So we're using 8 out of 128 gigabytes. So we could safely, let's just do 96,000, because I don't remember the exact amount of megabytes. Never exceed your system RAM. If you're on a system that doesn't have swap, as I am, that will kill all your stuff. So let's go. So you can see we have Macintosh HD, which is the one we want. We don't want the base system. We can run this. And this is just going to boot. Now that we have more cores, it should run faster. So I'm going to try and download Cinebench for this, just so you can get an idea that the performance of this in these types of things is basically the same as it would be on either a real, well, better than most real Macs, because I don't think there's a real Mac that's as fast. So let's see our networking here. Oh, that's weird. Oh, never mind, it's all good. It's just that we don't have Wi-Fi, which I don't think any real Mac, even my old 2009 Mac Pro has Wi-Fi. So yeah, all Macs have Wi-Fi. So the desktop performance on this isn't great without pass-through, but for compute performance, it can be perfectly fine. So we can go to Cinebench. Okay, here we go. Accept. Now we just run a single multi-core. We might not have quite enough resolution to see. Oh, or do we need to set up an advanced benchmark? Because I hate how by default it's just going to use as much. Yeah, it's got a minimum time, which to me is, I'm sure it's great for getting more accurate result, but I just want to test if it works. So here we go. Start. Okay, so the performance is reasonably good. We're beating out the 98 ADH, and we're a bit below the Threadripper, which has the same number of cores. Which generation of Threadripper is this? If that's that feels just a tiny bit lower than it should be, but I'm trying to, where does it say this is a Threadripper? If it's like an OG Threadripper, you know, whatever. But if it's not an OG, if it's like a 3000, whatever. But no, this should absolutely cream a OG Threadripper, but might just be the test being a bit funky, but it's a pretty good score. When I've had this fully set up, I've generally found that the performance is about 97 to 98% of what bare metal would be with a lot less hassle. So now to fix various issues. So I'm going to show everything except for pass-through. Now the first one is audio. Now I can't show this because I'm recording on the same interface, but audio is relatively straightforward as long as you have a USB audio interface. So I'm going to shut this down and show you how you would do it. Okay, I just noticed that in the display section we actually can change the resolution and that works fine. So I'm sorry for providing fake news. Previously that was impossible, but I guess with a new macOS update, because they have started to make it better support virtualization, you can now choose a different resolution if you want, which will make the whole system more usable. Now what I'm hoping I can also achieve is, because I've set the CPU topology correctly, which in past experiences with virtualization has had a significant impact on virtual machine performance, I'm hoping that will help here. Because if it thinks that it's got 32 cores, it's got to use the CPU differently. Here we go. That's almost done. See what score we can get. With 16 cores, 32 threads, 13K. Okay, so still not quite. That's about the same as the M1 Max. So that's not quite what I would expect, because I can usually get about 16, 17,000. So that's odd. I don't know if that's because of the amount of cores, but now let me show you some of the other stuff we can do in here, and then I'll show the audio stuff, because so we can do Command K. That's how you connect to a server. So if you've set up you do SMB // and then 192.168.3/root, if that's how you've set up your mount. Connect. And now remember this in my keychain. There you go. So now I have mounted my host file system, and I can actually, I'm going to get my terminal as well. It's a KDE thing where that can go through. Get my terminal here. Yes. Okay. And now I can sudo nano /etc smb. No, it's Samba /smb.conf. I can show you the secret source here. There's two things you need to do to make this part of the sharing work. The first thing is hosts allow, and I just put 192 here, which is potentially insecure, but on a private network it isn't. That means that because this will be on a different subnet than your host system, you need to add this to allow that. And then I can also, if we scroll down, you can see the share I've created. Root. Now, something to note, the parentheses, or not parentheses, the square bracket root is the mount point. So the mount point is going to be SMB my IP address /root. The comment doesn't matter. The path is the system path. So if you wanted to give the root, you do it that way. Writable means I can write. Public means public. Valid users means SMB users, which is different. Same idea, but you have to do SMB password -a your name to make it work. printable. It's not a printer. Create mask is so that if you create files on Windows, it creates them with appropriate permissions. I'm not sure how that plays in with other Unixes, but that's still good to have. So that's how we do that. Next one you got to do is with your firewall. Depends what firewall system you're using. I'm using Firewall D. I always have to look this up. So it's no shame in doing that. Zone equal, and then you want to do libvirt. That will be purely for your libvirt based virtual machines. Now I recommend if you do this, don't also use libvirt for testing malware, because that could potentially allow it to access your network, although that shouldn't cause any huge problems unless you very severely misconfigured something. And now we want to do zone libvirt, and then you want to do -add -service equal smb Samba. Okay, I might have done that wrong. I think it's just Samba then? Yeah, it's just Samba. So there you go. So that's that. And then you want to do sudo firewall -cmd reload, because permanent, for whatever reason, you can do another one which is transient, and that doesn't trigger. So I don't quite know why it works the way it does, but it does, which is annoying. So we've done that. You'd also want to do that for SSH if you wanted to make that work. Now we have a system, here we go, where we can easily work with stuff from our root system and all the drives on our root system. So we can go to MNT, which is our other drives, and maybe we wanted to go most of my anime on there. So maybe what we want to do is we want to load some of that. Let's go for something that everyone who has any opinion on anime that could constitute a good taste will agree is a good anime. Let's open that up. Oh, you can't open MKVs default, so we need to get VLC Media Player. I guess we won't be having a free viewing party of critically acclaimed anime because apparently VLC doesn't work without QICI on Mac, which is kind of frustrating, but that's a limitation. Until you pass through a graphics card, some stuff won't work. You can, and I'll do that now, you can install an IDE, you can install a web browser, and we can even get an idea of what browser performance with no acceleration is like. It won't be horrible, but it also won't be amazing. Okay, 100 runs a minute, that's good. So now I'm going to show you how to do all the pass-through steps, except for the graphics card, because I can't show that, but I will explain how it works. Okay, so to pass through an audio device is different. Most USB devices, such as the mouse and keyboard, yes, it's also in use by other pass-through VMs, are really straightforward. That's my top rare keyboard, and now I also want to pass through my mouse, my Logitech. Actually, I had a funny thing with one of the other VMs I was trying stopped working because I had that different mouse, and then I got this one and I didn't change the settings. But other than that, because this is based on device IDs, it should be relatively okay, even if you change the port it's plugged into. So now we can go PCI host, and now we have to do these devices. And I'm not going to do these because this will break my setup if I do this while recording. That I always plug my audio into my as-medias because audio does not pass through well. Now, luckily on my motherboard and many others, you'll have a USB 3.1 controller, which is separate enough that you can pass it through without incident. You may also be able to pass through all of your motherboard USB controllers. That may be more difficult. It's always going to be possible with the right setup, but it may take more work. Now, if you're going to pass through your graphics card, let me just scroll down, and this unfortunately, it's 2080 Ti, so it's not going to work in macOS, but if you did want to pass it through, you have to pass through everything on the same number. So you see this 6500:0123. All of those have to go through. Now, there's basically two choices. You can do single GPU, which is how I'll actually show the setup for this, because I do have a Windows VM here. We can go back to Virtual Machine Manager. We have a Hello System and a Windows one, so we can show either. So here's my Hello System one, and it works just the same, but you can see I've got all my PCI devices passed through. And then what I have, I'm going to get my terminal, and we're going to go Okay, so we go to etc libvirt, and then we do cd hooks. Now here you can see, now by default it would just call this QEMU shell script, but if you download a helper from the pass-through post, you can then get this QEMU.d folder. And here we can have, for various stuff we can have, for each one we can have script. So I'm going to show, both these are the same, but I'm going to show you my hello ones. I'm going to prepare, this is the start script, and then I'm going to cat that. Oh, we have to go into one more, cd begin. Then I'm going to do cat start. And here you can see, and this was set up for when I was using GNOME. Now I'm going to have to change that for, you don't need the GDMX session, but otherwise it's the same. So what it does is it runs this for verbose. So if you're SSH'd in, this makes everything way easier. Because I had to debug this and made everything easier. You do these, you do echo 0, this, I'll link a GitHub with a better explanation where I got this script from. You echo this, and then your GPUs. Now, of course, if you're using a Mac VM, you're probably using an AMD GPU, but it's similar. You just have to unload the drivers and then virsh node dev detach all of the parts. And then you mod probe in the VFIO PCI driver to replace the NVIDIA ones, at which point the VM is now able to start. Now, I can't show that, as I've explained, because it would kill the recording, but I can. That's basically how that works. I'm going to remove these here so that I can start this again. So here's an Arch wiki. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but here's an important part, which is to isolate. Now, you have a couple of options for isolating your GPU. You can find using a script on this wiki, you can get the IDs, and then you can go VFIO PCI.IDs and then do this. Or in your bootloader, or there's also a script they have here which will allow you to just do the non-initialized. I don't often do multi-GPU pass-through, so I'm not an expert, but I'll link this and some other guides that will help you on that in the description. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video. I think that's going to be all for now. I'll leave resources in the description to help you if you want to try a setup like this. I also strongly recommend checking out Morganart's YouTube channel. She has her own way of virtualizing macOS that is really good, and I believe she also offers premium support. You can get that if you want. I'm more of a DIY type of guy, but I don't have any issue with someone wanting to sell their services to help someone set something complicated up. That's going to be all for now. Bye.